Welcome to the 20th edition of the Congress of the New Urbanism. I'm John Norquist, the president of CNU, and I have some ministerial announcements that I have to make, which some of which might be stimulating, others not, but I'll get through them as fast as I can. First of all, the member meeting of CNU is now open. Now, why did I have to say that? Legally, I have to say it to announce that our elections are open. Voting is online, as it has been now for several weeks, and it closes at noon on Friday. Tomorrow morning, it closes at noon on Friday, and then the results will be announced in this room at 5:30 on Saturday at the closing plenary. Tomorrow morning, all the candidates will be in this room at 8:30 in the morning. You can come earlier, so those that are really interested in your vote may even be here before 8:30, and you can meet the candidates at that time. Now, the bookstore asked me to announce that for those of you that are interested in books and don't feel like lugging them home, they will mail them to the destination of your choice for free. So if you buy books from the bookstore, the delivery home is free. AIA attendees can get, and AICP can get their continuing education credits. For AIA, please have attendees sign in at the back of the room. Remind them to write their names and AIA numbers clearly. For AICP, attendees report attendance online at planning.org/CM. They can search event number 19209 for a list of all sessions and tours from CNU. All right, I have almost completed all of my ministerial duties, except for one more thing. We have people here tonight in the House from the Florida DOT. And some of you who are not transportation obsessives may not realize the importance of that, but I think it's really great. And they're here along with Billy Hadaway. All right, so I now want to just give a brief report to you about CNU, and then I'll be introducing Stefanos Polyzoides to introduce our main speaker for the night, Liz Plater-Zyberk. Heather, it's up, okay. All right, so the CNU is recovering from the recession like a lot of nonprofit organizations, but we're gaining membership very quickly again now. I don't know if that means the recession's over or if people somehow hope the recession's over and are joining CNU to help them end the recession sooner. We like to think the latter. And we're involved in a lot of things, and one of our proudest achievements is the Sustainable Street Network Principles book, which came out in March and was grabbed up so quickly by many people that we've now almost run out. There's a few copies left at the CNU table around the corner. But we're getting 5,000 more copies, which will be available in the next month or so. And this book is having a big effect. It's built on the intellectual content that we developed with the Institute of Transportation Engineers in the book on walkable urban thoroughfares. And it's a result of one of our initiatives, and that's why I bring it up. The CNU has a process of member volunteer initiatives, which is really the key to what CNU does. And so these membership initiatives are things that I will tell you about in just a moment. But before I do that, we have an even more special guest than the Florida DOT that I want to introduce and ask her to come up and say a few words. And that is the mayor of the great city of West Palm Beach, Mayor Jerry Moylo. And Mayor, if you could come up on the stage while I'm introducing you, that would be very useful. Mayor Moylo was sworn into office on March 31, 2011. Before that, she was a West Palm Beach City Commissioner from 2006 on, re-elected in 2007 and 2009. She graduated with a PhD in education leadership from Syracuse University and worked for many years as a school district leader, and she has a lot of interest in those issues, but also in all the issues that mayors have to be involved in. She served as the community liaison to several city committees, including the Cultural Committee, the City Green Task Force, the Water Catchment Advisory Committee, the Education Advisory Committee, and many more. She resides in West Palm Beach, which is really important because she's the mayor of West Palm Beach. That's very convenient. It looks good on your campaign literature as well. She's not only the mother of Jessica, but the grandmother of Jordan, Jada, and Julian. And so she is somebody with great family values. And this book I was just talking about that we're so proud of, I want to give you a personal copy for you to train your staff to be able to build the kinds of streets that will add value to the great city of West Palm Beach. Thank you.
John was telling me how I should fix Okeechobee Boulevard out there, so I now have an assignment from him. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to West Palm Beach. We are so proud and honored to have you here in our city, and we're so aware of what a prestigious organization the Congress for the New Urbanism is, and to have you here and to spend time in our city is indeed a real honor. I particularly want to thank all of the members of our local team who spent a lot of long hours working on the program for you. They've done an amazing job, and I want to particularly thank Michael Busha, Dana Little, Anthea Giannatis, Rick Gonzalez, and all the others who worked so hard to put this program together. They're a really great crew of people, and I would stop by and visit them because they often met in our city hall. And, you know, I don't even think they broke for lunch. They just kept working and working. So it's really excellent. I want to tell you a little bit about West Palm Beach. I know you've just been here a short time and you're going to be here a few days, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about our city. First of all, I really love being mayor of West Palm Beach. I've been mayor for about 13 months, but who's counting? And you know, I wake up every day excited about the possibilities of where our city can go and where we can take our city. We are very rich in resources. We're blessed in our surroundings. And we really do have some extraordinary and dynamic people who live and work in our city. I've also come to appreciate how our city serves as an inspiration to others. and to all of us. It's a source of promise that each day can bring about a new opportunity, new discoveries, new directions, and new hope. A successful great city means having great parks, great recreation areas, world-class library, fun opportunities for citizens to come together. And let me tell you, we really like to have fun in West Palm Beach. So I think that over the next few days, you'll have the opportunity to attend at least one of the many parties that we have during the week. And so we really enjoy it. But consider this. Our whole eastern border, 7 miles, is the Intercoastal Waterway. We have 54 parks and public spaces. They include a skate park. We also have an aquatic center. We have preserves. And we also have our magnificent new waterfront park that if you haven't already seen it, I know you will sometime during the week you're here. We have an 18-hole golf course, picnic areas, athletic fields, boat ramps, and as I said, our great new waterfront park. West Palm Beach is also a city with a wide range of housing options. You can live in a wonderful, handsome, historic house in West Palm Beach, or you can live in a hip downtown condo, or you can live in a new house in a gated community on a golf course. So just about any kind of housing you're interested in, we have here in West Palm Beach. And if you're interested in cultural activities, I invite you to go to the Kravis Center for the Performing Arts. Stop at the Norton Museum of Art. Visit DramaWorks, or stop at our photographic center. All of those things are within walking distance of here at the convention center. So if you have a few moments that you're not tied up, take advantage of our wonderful cultural opportunities. So please enjoy your time in our city. And I know once you've been here, you'll come back. And you'll come back to visit, but you might be like so many other people who come back to live. So we hope you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I'm willing to give you advice on your streets, like add parking on each side of the boulevard to make it easier to walk across. Okay, and a bike lane, and well, I'll think of something else later. All right, so the transportation initiative has come up with this fine document and done a lot of other things, but we have other initiatives, and I wanted to mention another one of them. The Health Districts Initiative, which is brand new, and we're working with the Center for Disease Control. And later on this week, Richard Jackson from UCLA, who used to be at CDC, and has spoken about the health impacts of human settlement patterns. And we decided to get into this one with health districts because the way health facilities are being built, they're usually built in a very anti-urban way in cities. And it has an impact which particularly is offensive to me as a former member of the United States Army Reserve and as a medic, and I worked at a Veterans Administration hospital in a parking lot. Sort of a variation on the tower in the park, only the hospital in the parking lot. And the veterans were so isolated from the community and were made to feel like they were institutionalized instead of being part of the community. And so we're starting this initiative during this Congress. There'll be people here from CDC like Charles Green and others that are working on it. And I wanted to mention one other one which we started on a few years ago, but it's starting to become more important. We're starting to make progress, and that is dealing with the financial disincentives that come out of the government in terms of percentage caps on non-residential in the mortgage markets and the multiple family capital programs at HUD. This is a picture of Payne Avenue in the east side of St. Paul, where my grandfather had a carpentry shop with 2 apartments above, and then my uncle Earl, who became a plumber, had his plumbing shop with 2 apartments above. Today it has a Hmong family with a flower shop, and they live above in the apartments. And it's a form that's very common around the United States in anything that was built before World War II, but much less common today. And the federal government, with the work that happened under the Coolidge administration with the Commerce Secretary Herbert Hoover, started to enshrine separate use zoning into federal codes, and then when the FHA was created in 1934, it was included in that. And all these programs, even though they're well intended, have these anti-urban features in them that give us things like Levittown, where all the houses are separated from everything else. They tried to minimize the impact of this by saying it didn't have to be completely separated. You could have these percentage caps and allow some non-residential. But the whole thing really discouraged the kinds of things that those of us that are urbanists care about, and urbanist developers have been stymied by this for years and have complained about it. And so we decided to finally try to do something. But the impact is obvious if you just look at the evolution of retail in the post-war period. This is a shopping center in a suburb north of Milwaukee that had nothing but retail in it, one of the first. And this is a street not far away of the old farm with the housing above. And in Los Angeles, the dingbat apartments with the parking underneath, because they didn't want to bother with retail. And so they, in order to meet the standard to get the financing, and in Chicago, the 4+1s with the parking on the first floor on a street that's zoned for retail, but the parking qualified. A lot of these buildings aren't that pleasant to live in, and so some of them have been torn down and new ones built, but they're not built in the urban way. In this case, on the Red Line, near the Red Line stop in Morse Avenue in Chicago, the housing is built off to one side with a utility room for the washing machines and so forth as part of that building, and then separately, because of the financing, the retail built on the side. Urbanism has become more popular. You all know the evolution of retail with the malls gradually disappearing, no new malls being built, and the lifestyle centers that in a way mimic and sometimes almost are the same as the old main streets, but the one thing they don't have is mixed use. All of the second floors in this lifestyle center are fake, and if the developer wanted to put housing there, you wouldn't be able to sell the mortgages into the secondary mortgage market or get financing through the multifamily programs. This is something we're trying to address. It's a complicated issue. There's a lot of factors to it. It's not so much a case of evil villains trying to make it this way, but it's something that we think we can make some real progress on in a short period of time, maybe over the next couple of years, and actually change these regulations so that you could even have a Waffle House with apartments above. Actually, that's existing near Atlanta, Georgia. So if we could go back to the regular CNU slide, I want to say that just one more thing about these initiatives and all of the things that CNU does. If you go back and read the CNU charter, the CNU is an organization that's focused on changing the world. We're a change-oriented organization. We want to make life better for people. We want to add value to their lives. And we think that urbanism works better on the basis of the economy, on the basis of the environment, and it performs better in terms of social justice. It's easier for people to get what they need even when they're not well off, when they have the connectivity, the convenience of urban life, where they can live close to other people that might have more resources than they do. I always use the example of somebody who lives at 6 Mile Road and Woodward Avenue in Detroit, in a city that's become completely autocentric. It's very tough to be a poor person in that kind of environment. The work tends to be far away in the suburbs, beyond the transit. The downtown is reviving slowly, but is devoid of jobs compared to other downtowns in the country. Compare that to somebody who lives in the poorest neighborhood of the Bronx in New York, and they're a half-hour subway ride away from the most dense job market in America on Wall Street. And so the impacts that we have when we're designing communities, and the impacts that people have that are just getting too narrowly focused and just looking at, for example, transportation engineering that just focuses on throughput and making the roads bigger and having the cars drive faster, and doesn't realize that in the urban context that streets need to add value to the place where they're built. That's the kind of thing that the new urbanists do. That form-based coding is not just about creating some sort of aesthetically pleasing design. It's about changing neighborhoods and improving neighborhoods and preserving neighborhoods that can add value to people's lives, especially those who need that value the most. That's what CNU is about. And that's why your activity in CNU, whether it's at the national level or through the chapters or as an individual member, as somebody that contributes to the intellectual effort of CNU, whatever it is, it's important because it can reach out and change people's lives for the better. And one person that recognizes that better than almost anybody else I've ever met is Stefanos Polyzoides, who lives in Pasadena, has been involved in the evolution of Pasadena. He's well educated. You can all look up his biography if you want. It's actually on Google. I mean on Wikipedia, so you can read all about him. So I won't give you all that. But in Pasadena, he's inserted buildings that are accommodate density without being high-rises, with adding value to the neighborhood around the buildings. He has created 2 TODs, transit-oriented developments around transit stops, that are among the most successful in the world. He has added value to people's lives in Guatemala and in Europe and throughout the world. And he's also one of the founders, the 6 founders of CNU. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce Stefanos Polyzoides to introduce our keynote speaker tonight.
Just a reminder that CNU is a roll-up-your-sleeves kind of operation. So. One of life's special pleasures is the opportunity to introduce a close, long-time friend in front of a room full of peers. And that is because the person being honored can be presented in terms both personal and professional, and so it's going to be tonight. I first met Liz Plater-Zyberk, parenthesis, and her then little-known boyfriend, comma, now husband, close parenthesis, in 1971, during a junior year studio at the Princeton School of Architecture. It was my first teaching assignment ever as an assistant to Michael Graves, and a very unsettling experience, to be sure, 3 times a week during studio to be surrounded by a master and 30 kids by far more capable than I will ever be. One of my sharpest memories of the studio is that my charges seemed more self-confident facing the architectural unknown than I did, and not surprisingly, Liz was one of them and is still leading the way. You can imagine that Liz made quite an impression then, as she does now, of course. Well, we were 41 years younger, and she was carrying in her heart also a badge of honor, being one of a handful of women the first to ever be accepted into the university. But on top of it, there she was for all of us to see, an accomplished student, thoughtful, inventive, and, well, just special. How special, you want to know? Well, the kind of person that exudes this odd impression at age 21 that they really know exactly where they're headed, or better yet, that they know exactly what questions they're going to ask next. It didn't take very long for my first impressions of her to be proven right. In 1982, I came across a publication of Seaside in Progressive Architecture. In a single moment, I had the epiphany that urbanism was the part of my life and my design spectrum that I was missing and striving for, and the two courageous people I happened to know quite well, it turned out, had gotten there first all by themselves. And what a feat that was. I wouldn't be surprised if a third of the people in this room have had similar experience over the last 2 decades, inspired by Liz's drawings and her words. And there is something else, even more important, that most people in this room also share, that can be traced directly to Liz and her leadership of DPZ. The amazing sense of generosity that they all display towards the rest of us, who were invited one at a time to participate in early charrettes across the land, and were drawn through this process not only into their enthusiasm, but also into their skills, into their curiosity, and their encouragement to carry on, to strive on despite nasty opposition at the time and absurd odds. And together, literally hundreds of us, to end up constructing the greatest cause of our generation in this country, the Congress of the New Urbanism. On this, the 20th anniversary of the CNU, this is how I would hope that you would like to welcome Liz to the podium tonight. As the person that has dedicated herself to the least popular, but unquestionably the most important of CNU causes, teaching and leading the most prominent school of architecture and urbanism in the land. As the brilliant designer of many individual buildings, a planning strategist like no other, an urbanist designer of dozens of notable projects from small to large all over the country, as a thinker, writer, promoter of ideas, generating many of the key ingredients of the intellectual platform of the Congress, as a leader, supporter, and friend of causes often not popular but always substantive, and finally as a human being whose deep character, her kindness, her calmness, her strength and dignity were central to the co-founding of the CNU in 1982 and have carried it to resolution of every difficult issue ever since. Liz has earned my trust and admiration. I think she has earned our trust and admiration to such an extent that every time I reach the point of a challenging decision, I often find myself asking the question, would Liz do this? Or how would she do this? And after I'm done, my thoughts often drift to, what would she think of what I just did? There is no doubt, therefore, that she has become the conscience of the CNU, and therefore the most precious member of our family, a position she richly deserves. I present you our very own Liz Plater-Zyberk.
What an introduction. It can only be downhill from now. This is intended to be a short and simple presentation as an opener. It's really great to see this room full of people and to see all of you here. First slide. Do I do this myself? Let's see.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. "20 years. And how great is it to mark this anniversary in a downtown that owes much of its current vitality to this organization's earliest efforts. I've been asked this evening to look back at CNU's achievements and forward to some of our challenges. It turns out this is nearly an impossible assignment. At first, it seemed like an ideal opportunity to collect the most impressive and beautiful images of the projects and publications we have all worked on in these past 2 decades. But before long, it was abundantly apparent that such an endeavor should be an assignment for a card-carrying historian. There's already so much to research and record. Along the way, I have asked many of you what CNU's most important accomplishments have been and what pressing challenges lie ahead. And CNU Central formally solicited the membership to opine on the past and the future. So what follows is an aggregate perspective, an attempt to show the breadth of our reach, by no means complete here tonight. There will be very few illustrations. I would invite you to see the art of the new urbanism, the exhibit. There are a few pieces of it here in the hall, I understand, and in another location in town. Any voids in this presentation are not intended to slight or offend and may be ascribed to my limited perspective, inclined towards design, situated at one antipode of the nation on the far southern East Coast, and ensconced in academia to boot. Also, I am privileged to know and count many of you as friends, and although I am likely to mention some of you, I will neglect most of you. I will not focus on the shortfalls or failures of the new urbanism, although many of us have made a respectable living by pointing out the shortfalls of the systems we want to change. Each imperfect result that any of us have been involved with represents an ambitious attempt and an important victory over long-held conventions or customs. Rob Studeville says that the Congress for the New Urbanism is the only national membership organization of elite multidisciplinary professionals and practitioners. We are dedicated to compact mixed-use walkable community development. You are the go-to group of experts. You have produced hundreds of new neighborhoods, urban and corridor redevelopment plans, infill projects, regional plans, policy initiatives, including legislation and regulation at all levels of government. Recent CNU initiatives, such as John was telling you about, have harnessed the power of a large and diverse membership, resulting in remarkable advances. It took about 12 years for the organization to figure out how to engage the membership in this way. Some of you may remember the task forces that we began with. So the title for this conference is The New World. Florida was the New World 400 years ago. It continues to be that for the new urbanism, with some of the earliest attempts, of course, generating here. Seaside in the Panhandle, the T&D Code in Dade County, Celebration, and West Palm Beach, the city that we're in. This map has not been updated since 2005, but you can see even several years ago an impressive showing of places that have been influenced by our ideas and our work. So to take you closer into the region, a few photographs to show you that we in this place are sitting in a sensitive and somewhat precarious place given the approach of sea level rise. But in the southeast of Florida, we are here in West Palm Beach. I don't have a pointer, but we are in the middle of that slide. located between Palm Beach on the coast and the rest of West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County to the west, not unlike Madison, between two bodies of water. And I thought that I would show you, this isn't the most beautiful slide in the world, but we are in the lower center of that slide in this conference center. And in the upper right-hand corner is the waterfront along Clematis Street, at the end of Clematis Street. And you will have a trajectory of walking through this area as you go from function to function. When we came here in the, some 15 years ago, there were about 100 empty acres, 70 under one ownership, from a town that had been largely cleared. Now it's largely reconstructed. And that reconstruction began under the leadership of some far-seeing and courageous people. And I refer to Dan Carey, Mayor Nancy Graham, who Dan, as the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council Director, working with Mayor Graham, took a look at the city and structured a kind of beginning for its revival, which I was privileged to participate in. In this plan, in fact, there was to be a flyover bringing you in from, not unlike the one on the West Coast, on the West Shore, that would bring you into this downtown, and it was preparing to be a kind of highway nightmare. So, John, this is a highway that you don't have to take down because it was never built. But Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council first found its footing under Dan Carey's leadership, and now under Michael Busha's direction, has been for years working on this region. And so you can see tens of plans and projects that the Regional Planning Council has made for its region of 3 counties. It has extended its effort into other counties, including Miami-Dade. And one of the award-winning efforts, the Town, Villages, and Countryside Plan from several years ago. Michael has been supported by Marcela Camblor, Anthea Gianottis, and Dana Little. And I would just like to point out that this is the group of people who have produced this Congress, a small group with a number of helpers and others of us from around the state, including Chuck Bohl, CNU-Florida chapter head, and their work, which has been so effective in the region, has produced this Congress. So I would proffer great thanks to them for that. It was a big effort. And one of the projects that they're working on now, just to give you some of the background, some more background on this remarkable group of people, is this idea of bringing a commuter rail to the east coast of Florida, the highest density part of the state. And Mike has done some wonderful presentations on this. You will be hearing more about both the place that we're in and the dreams for some of these projects from him in the course of this conference. This is not Seaside. This is one of the early train stations of Florida, much as it might seem to be something more recent. And so this is just to show that we have had this. We have had an urban background in the state, and we will once again reappreciate transit, I'm sure. So, reflecting on the diversity of its members and interests, CNU continues to discuss how to engage its members, an organization of the elite, versus how to increase its advocacy and engage the public. And what is the best organizational structure? This is the first year that we are voting for members of the board, and so I urge you to vote just as John did. But whatever the future structure, By its mere existence, by these conferences, by the individual initiatives that the Congress for the New Urbanism has supported, it has not only grown and flourished as an organization, but it has empowered your individual efforts to improve the world. So how do we see our work in light of the future that so rudely appeared in 2008? I just got ahead of myself, I'm sorry. Steph, you flustered me with that incredible introduction. So related to that idea of the diversity of this organization, and before we go into the future, I do have to talk to you about the past. I was told not to be a Pollyanna about it, but I'm going to give you some of the high points, I think. One is we have established international influence. There are many people in this room who are from abroad, from countries outside of the U.S., and we welcome you. We look forward to hearing about your projects and to sharing our experience with you. New urbanism has been brought to all the continents on the globe. A few years ago, we might not have been able to say this, but now we can. The most recent interesting fact that I've heard about is that the country of Gabon in Africa will be establishing a growth pattern following the SMART code. We have no idea who's bringing this to them, but never mind. And many of you in the audience have worked in Asia, in various countries in Europe, throughout North America, and of course in South America. And there are beautiful projects which are emerging. This is Cayala in Guatemala, a team effort by a number of people, including our mentor, Leon Creer. A huge number of organizations have been influenced by this group. We have large numbers of partner organizations. We have spawned organizations. And here in Florida, there are some important efforts. I think you'll be hearing about the myregion.org state plan effort later on. The Seaside Institute continues its work. And nationally, the National Charette Institute, National Town Builders Association, Form-Based Code Institute, New Urban Guild, Center for Applied Transect Studies. I won't read all the partner organizations, but many of the initiatives are carried on in partnerships. And abroad, certainly the Council for European Urbanism, the Australian Council of New Urbanism, INTBAU, the Princess Foundation, and so on. So when we started 20 years ago, there was a diverse group of people in the room, but certainly we didn't have representatives of many organizations, and this influence has extended quite broadly. Part of that influence, of course, involves education, a continuum of education. We have often lamented the fact that the schools are not doing the job that they should to prepare people for dealing with urban issues in the manner that we are doing, and that there's a lack of formal information. But our colleague organization, INTBAU, in fact, has been tracking the universities and colleges where there is at least some coursework, not always in architecture, sometimes in traffic engineering, and we're beginning to see this abroad as well. I point out to you the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Querétaro, which actually has a master's in new urbanism. And we have colleagues with us here from the Universidad Iberoamericana in Mexico. That mission of education continues through the publications. One could not enumerate all the books and articles that have been published. You'll have to visit the bookstore for that. But I list here the several that were produced in an aggregated effort of the members addressing problems and ideals. A very interesting change recently, New Urban News renaming itself to Better Cities and Towns, I think reflects very clearly the extent of that influence and how many more people are working on how many more things. There have also been a number of tools developed. Similarly, through aggregate effort, a series of new methods and techniques that set a high standard for a national, quasi-scientific approach to making decisions about the built and natural environments. Certainly the lexicon, which has attempted to establish a uniform vocabulary, the partnership that produced LEAD-ND, the transect, scenario modeling, any number of these things. The T&D design rating standards, which have been incorporated now in EPA smart growth standards, the smart code and its modules. One could go on about each one of these things. And one of these methods, of course, the participation, the public participation methods. Research engaged by our members and colleagues, certainly influenced by our work, which is very important to carrying on and strengthening the positions taken very often initially by observation in the Jane Jacobs method, but a number of universities and various organizations have brought forward data which no doubt has become quite useful in various, under various conditions. I call to your attention the New Urban Timeline, which gives a history of our efforts, which is a website, the archive of the New Urbanism at my own university that seeks your materials in order to archive our work. But beyond that, market studies, which emerged from George Washington University, the Active Living program that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation produced, which every time you read about obesity and walking in the built environment, in the public media, in all the media, is a direct outgrowth of the effort that CNU made with Robert Wood Johnson. Lastly, I would point out to the Soul of the Community, the Knight Foundation report generated here in South Florida, which pointed out that actually the amenity of the community drives economic development and not vice versa. So that old refrain about the economy first, jobs first, in fact, it may be the reverse of that. And you all certainly have been busy at the level of policy and regulation. The research, in fact, enables policy in some cases. It provides the cover, so to speak. And at the national level, of course, we know about Hope 6. Did you know that 267,000 units were built? And currently, the Sustainable Communities Initiative, the first time that DOT, EPA, and HUD have been asked to work together. Our own Shelley Petitia playing an important role there. And John Norquist already told you about the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac effort that's underway. State and regional policies are probably too lengthy to describe, but certainly the work in California, the California State Plan, the regional plan here in Florida of towns, villages, and countrysides, various other state plans, enabling legislation in Pennsylvania, and the most recent that I heard of, the Commercial Center Revitalization Act in South Carolina, trying to remove the barriers for suburban corridor redevelopment. At the local level, there are countless T&D, TOD, and form-based codes that are finding a place in communities across the land. The SMART code can count 237 regulations passed. There are major city form-based codes like Miami 21 that I worked on, and various other kinds of policy in place. Montgomery County, Maryland is a leading example. The Public Works Manual for New York City, who would have thought that, is a real model for us all. And finally, something that perhaps we don't take credit for, but certainly happened in parallel with our efforts and contributes to them, is the whole change in school choice. But probably the most important result of our work is that we've participated in a significant culture change. In 20 years, a number of things have occurred. This could be, you could probably make a better list, each one of you, than this. But certainly that design matters. And if you think back to some 20 years ago, community building was not anybody's goal. The value of shared benefit in bringing housing together with shops and schools and civic buildings was just not on anybody's radar. It existed in places like Seaside and perhaps Laguna West. But that idea that community, that building is about community building, not just one type, is something that I think we can take credit for. Slow urbanism, I'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. Community participation in devising communities. A host of building types that didn't exist a number of years ago. Live, work, granny flats. I just found out they're called Fonzie flats in Australia. Courtyard housing, which was not a market type before, the Katrina Cottage, and the urban supermarket. There will be a session on urban supermarkets, just as there is one here in West Palm Beach. And one of the things that I'm particularly pleased to look back upon is the fact that there is a place for traditional architecture and craftsmanship and handwork in these communities. It's no longer the isolated reproduction house that finds its way into a suburban street, but the fact that there is a context for continuing the formal traditions that represent cultural traditions. The architects would understand this issue of the spirit of place trumping the spirit of time. And finally, that we have developed a culture of research, learning, sharing, critiquing, and collaboration, I would say unlike any other organization that I know of, and which certainly contributes tremendously to the advances that we have made. But yes, there's still work to be done. And what does the future look like? So for the last 3 years, the situation has looked bleak indeed, at least by comparison with the immediate prior experience. All of those things that we can look back on that we did were done in many places during boom time. 2 decades of virtually uninterrupted building. That was lucky indeed, a reminder of few equivalent times in recent history. We certainly did not waste the boom. Unhappily, now that there is a large skilled cadre of new urban designers, planners, code writers, developers, and administrators, there seems to be less work to be done and less need for our capacities, or at least those of us who are in the business have been feeling that. Some have remarked to me that this uncomfortable threshold of success, competition among friends, is a test of our sustainability. Are the ideas we believe in and the principles we hold dear truly timeless? And are they adaptable to new times and circumstances? Or does the next generation need to invent something new? How can we integrate change in order to avoid the destructive about face of the disenchanted or discouraged? That painful lesson lies in the history of our cities, the hiatus and loss of knowledge that occurred less than 100 years ago. Garden City and City Beautiful advances lost to the Depression and the war that followed. By looking ahead and identifying and confronting the problems and the opportunities these represent, we can address the new world. No doubt, during the course of this Congress, you will be engaged in presentations and discussions, and about many of these, so I will not dwell on them too long. My intention in the next several slides is to transmit a sense of opportunity and urgency, because while our work took advantage of the opportunities of the last 2 decades, we are also honed and prepared by the battles that have brought us as a group to this anniversary, and we can look forward to putting much of our hard-learned experience to work. Chuck Bohl reminds me that the ethos of the CNU grows out of the fact that we exist as an organization. And so that organization has the experience that can deal with these issues. So I'm just going to take you through these very briefly. The economic volatility and stratification that I first identified, of course, this phrase, it's the economy stupid. The volatility relates to global finance, volume, and speed. The volume of finance and the speed at which it moves will only be increasing. And across the globe, as various regulations have disappeared, this is the volatility that we experienced in 2008. It's not going to go away. Any of the reading that you do on this, I think, would convince you of that. Hand in hand with that is the stratification of large money and small money, rich and poor. The smallness aspect of this is right up our alley. Incremental development, slow investment, all of the kinds of projects that many of us have worked on prove themselves to be efficient and flexible. In a 202 session this afternoon, we heard about 6 projects that, while slowing somewhat during the recession, outperformed their competition. And indeed, while some of the competition was not building or selling at all, the new urban projects were continuing. And Buff Chase tells me that some of the internal rate of return expectations are already shrinking so that slow investment might be more acceptable. It's in the area of large money, however, that I think our challenge lies primarily. So we're prepared for one end of this new scale of stratification, but it's the large end where finance drives development, not users. Mass production is returning. Many of the developers who laid out large suburban tracts of housing, sold them at the high point. Their buyers lost them. They're selling them back at pennies. They're buying them back at pennies on the dollar, building the same old things again. And this is a kind of aspect of the development industry that we have not dealt with successfully until now. The second point is governmental dysfunction. Most of us see this in the political stalemate, but as we look at the revenue diet that many governments are on, we can already begin to see responsibility for spending, for revenue, devolving from federal to state to local. Now, once again, for the new urbanists, that's not bad news. We like the idea of local culture. That's one of our strengths. I might point out with regard to political stalemate, however, that we need to be nonpartisan. We need to focus on our principles rather than the allegiance of which party we think might best produce or implement our ideas. John Norquist points out that deregulation might decrease the regulatory barriers that we've been fighting against for years. And 2 other opportunities, those of us who are aging and maybe moving into a more of a retirement mode, the encore generation as we've been called, have the opportunity to be activists in behalf of community designs or decreasing some of these regulations. And finally, one of the challenges that I think related to government and governance is the participation processes that we've developed have to evolve. We're already integrating social media, but they have to evolve in such a way that victimization or hijacking of the process, as many of us have pointed out in some of these meetings, could be dealt with. The third challenge, resource limits and climate change, is perhaps the one where we have already engaged most effectively. We've been actually working on this for many years. Energy efficiency could be called energy productivity. It can repurpose spending. If you're spending less money on energy issues or on fuel, you might be able to spend it more, or on roads, you might be able to spending it more on schools. The watchwords of conservation, preservation, infill, the next gen, which is looking at refill in abandoned places. Materials may become more valuable than labor. Craft, once again, valued. All of that is certainly part of our capacity. And already we are dealing with agrarian urbanism, slow urbanism, tactical urbanism, sprawl repair, which all speak to the resource limitations. Climate change has two possible reactions, mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is a universal reduction of energy waste and carbon emissions, but climate change adaptation, which requires a regional response to its impact, is an opportunity for new urbanists as we understand regional context and local character relative to environment as well as building. And let's not forget that some reduction of resources that leads to healthy walking and bicycling is already a common goal. So the challenges for the organization beyond the individuals, as Ralph Zucker has said, there's still a challenge building it the way you design it. But the organization is still working on eliminating the obstacles to urbanism. John mentioned the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac initiative. One of you, in your response to the survey, several of you mentioned the need to address school design, that while we have worked on housing effectively and retail and any number of other components of community design, schools still deserve some attention, in particularly in relation to size. Maintaining standards, quality, details, and metrics, continuing the debate. That kind of discussion that goes on vociferously here as we determine and iron out differences. The metrics from research and making those public in order to allow us to apply the changes that we're seeking. Increasing awareness, debunking misrepresentations, engaging the underserved. That last one, of course, has been a challenge all along. We have people with us who are concerned very much about affordable housing, and probably the current housing crisis in terms of the mortgage crisis is something that we could be engaging more thoroughly. And finally, the next gen talks about the dual role as if a decision has to be made, but I would say that that dual role of the organization should continue. We are an elite. We lead initiatives. We initiate some of the intellectual capital, but at the same time extending influence through broader communication is necessary. Addressing the large issue, which I've already talked about. So We have worked across the transect and across the charter, from regional plans to metropolitan codes, from small town design to zoning regulations, from environmental restoration to highway teardowns to exquisite architecture. Rich and poor, schools, hospitals, shopping, housing have all been touched and changed by the new urbanism. In light of those achievements, nothing can be more difficult than what we have already done. And speaking of soldiering on, I might point out that one of our most inspiring adherents, a resident of Habersham, Colonel Puck Mickleby, writes about a national strategy of sustainment with the goal of setting an example for the world. That is why I started with the slide of international influence. The New World is truly the world we have. The New World is truly the world. We have many representatives, people and projects from abroad with us today, and I hope you will seek them out. And perhaps it's time again to consider a Congress abroad. We've been in Canada, maybe we should go to Mexico. But the work ahead, I would point out, and the reason I have CNU at 20 halfway there in this last slide, this is, by the way, agrarian urbanism in the new urbanism, is because when you look back in the U.S. at systemic change that has occurred here, whether it is the introduction of oil and the invention of the automobile, or the invention of electricity and its proliferation to everyday life, all of those changes, those social changes, took 40 years from the beginning, from their inception to the point in which they were available to everyone. We've been at it for 20 years, and for that reason I say we're only halfway there. We cannot flag now. The next decade may be the most important yet to consolidate our victories and to advance our beliefs. Thank you very much.
Liz just informed me
that I have voted.
She has voted. So, but if you haven't, you have until noon on Friday to do it, and you can join Victor Dover, the chairman of CNU, for another day or so. You can join 2 days. Sorry, I didn't mean to take away one. You're halfway there. Anyway, he and I will be here at 8:30 tomorrow morning to help introduce you to the candidates that are running. It's really amazing to be opening it up to elected candidates instead of the self-selecting bunch of snobs that the rest of us were on the board. No, I didn't mean that, except for myself, of course. So anyway, this completes tonight's session. We're going to have hold it right there. I have to get my... what I meant was that we'll complete tonight's session after the next important item. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
I know I'm a lame duck for the program chair, but that's, this is getting ridiculous. I'm experiencing what Victor's experiencing. I'm Chuck Bohl. I'm the chair of CNU-Florida. I'm also the program chair for the Congress. Welcome on behalf of CNU-Florida. When the chapter normally has, like many chapters, a statewide meeting or an annual meeting, and when we learned that we would be hosting the Congress this year, we decided we would not hold our statewide meeting and instead would focus our energies on the Congress. And what we did decide was the awards. We have 2 awards we give each year, that we would sprinkle them in amongst this program. and this is an opportunity to let you know who you're dealing with here in Florida. And by the way, that was a tall order to, poor Liz gets asked, how about you give us a snapshot of 20 years of the CNU? It reminded me of when Victor Dover and John Torty have been asked to summarize the principles of the new urbanism in a 101 course in 30 minutes. Okay, so our first award, it's the only one we'll be doing this evening, is called the John Nolen Medal for contributions to urbanism in Florida. This is the 7th annual John Nolen Medal. It recognizes an individual or organization that has made significant contributions to the advancement of new urbanist principles in the state of Florida. This prestigious award provides the opportunity to recognize an outstanding body of work that upholds examples of performance and achievement to which all new urbanists may aspire. Probably the best way to, and I wanted to say something about the medal itself. It is an actual medal. It's sculpted by an artist, Roberto Santo. It's cast in bronze. The medal features the likeness of John Nolen, the pioneering town planner during the early 20th century. His work is still very visible. Of course, his work was throughout the nation, but he was very active in the state of Florida. And his work is still visible in some contemporary Florida towns, and he referred to the Sunshine State as a laboratory for town and city building. This is back in the 20s. And he advocated settlements that showcase the beauty of human work. And these words are minted on the medal around him, and on the back of the medal, these words appear, as well as a reproduction of his plan for Venice, Florida. So it's a beautiful medal. We have the certificates here. The actual medal that is cast in bronze, it's cooling, I believe, down in South Miami right now, and will be in the hands of the recipients tomorrow, but the awards themselves are here. So the best way to give you an idea of what this award has meant is just to share with you who the past recipients were, and I'll do this quickly. First, the first recipient was the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, which has been the tremendous host organization here in West Palm Beach. The staff has done an amazing job, and this Congress could not have taken part without them. But beyond that, they're a fabulous regional planning council, and Liz highlighted their work in her opening talk. Second came Robert and Daryl Davis. So the award right away blossomed into this opportunity to recognize different types of people who represent the different areas of expertise within the new urbanism. And Robert and Daryl Davis were our second award winners as the developers of Seaside. Third was the University of Miami School of Architecture. So the jury, and as the award is given each year, the recipients become the jury. So this becomes truly a jury of your peers who select the next recipients. And the school was selected for educating so many architects and urbanists who've gone on to be very influential within the new urbanism. Next came Walter Kulash, terrific traffic engineer, also a Floridian who we're very proud of. And then our first, we finally got around to recognizing a town planning and design firm, Dover Cole and Partners. And then last year, we recognized an individual planner, Don Martin, whose work in Winter Park really both preserved and helped advance the cause of urbanism in a great traditional town in Central Florida. So that gives you a really good idea of the range of this award and the types of people and organizations we've recognized. This year, the jury decided to give 2 Nolen medals. This is the first time we've given 2. And we took it very seriously that we'd be giving these before the entire Congress. So there was a lot of careful deliberation and discussion. Each of the previous recipients has a very close and direct relationship with our first recipient. And this is where I'd normally go through a bunch of slides and show you lots of work and things that they had done and build them up and then announce who it is. But it's simply too much. And you'll know why when I tell you that the first recipient of the Nolen Award for contributions to urbanism in Florida for 2012 is Elizabeth Plater-Zyberk and Company. This is my favorite part. They have to stand and be embarrassed for a little while I continue to say things. And now you know why I could go on, of course, and tell you all kinds of things about them. But let me tell you why the jury decided. First of all, Duany Plater-Zyberk, of course, has been an obvious choice from the beginning, but we were told from the very beginning, don't give it to us. Recognize other people and other organizations who do not get recognized for their good work. Duany Plater-Zyberk, anybody know how long they've been in business?
How long? You don't want to know.
Their website's out of date, so if you look there, you have to calculate it yourself. 32nd year this year, 2012. The firm's designed over 350 new and existing communities. I was in the office the other day. The beautiful binders of black books of plans and projects are lined up. Very impressive. They've won numerous awards. They, of course, are both founders of the Congress for New Urbanism. Their contributions begin in the neo-traditional town planning days through the very first one-page code for Seaside, to the T&D ordinance, to the Smart Code. All kinds of initiatives, including the Mississippi Renewal Forum, work in New Orleans and Haiti, publications. Should I go on? Okay. But none of this is why the chapter chose to recognize them before the Congress. What really mattered to us and why we wanted to recognize them is the impact they've had on people. On all of us here in Florida and in other places. So it's about the people that they have awakened, that they've inspired, that they have occasionally aggravated, that they have influenced for more than 3 decades. And for all of these reasons, we, the people of the Congress for New Urbanism's Florida chapter, do hereby award you, with our highest honor, the John Nolen Medal for contributions to urbanism in Florida.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We did it. One more. This is a special posthumous award of the John Nolen Medal for contributions to urbanism in Florida. And this again really does represent the full breadth of the new urbanism in a single individual. And this is the only person, to give you some idea of how talented this individual was, who was nominated for both of our awards. The Charles A. Barrett Memorial Award, this will be awarded Saturday morning before Leon Career Session, is our award for designer for excellence in architecture and urbanism. This individual was nominated for both that award and then this year for the John Nolen Medal. Bob Kramer is the only individual to have been nominated for both of these, and the jury was very passionate about selecting Bob to receive John Nolen Medal for contributions to urbanism this year. Bob was the consummate town founder. He's what we all talk about in terms of the ideal developer and shaper of a community. And a lot of the ways he approached his best-known work in Hale Village Center really connects with the themes of this year's Congress as well. He took a very incremental approach to developing the buildings in Hale Village Center, adding mixed uses, and actually living in his community. As the NTBA folks like to say, Bob was truly the guy in the tent that everybody went to when they had problems or issues, the guy who was in command, who was directing everything that was happening on the ground. When I asked him what the code was or guidelines that he had in place, it was just him. He was the code. He was the town architect and the developer. And then eventually people started hearing about this place in Central Florida, and some strange-looking characters started showing up. And Bob was always happy to show them around. I can't imagine what the neighbors thought when these guys started showing up. But he was only too happy to share what he was working on and what he was so passionate about, and he became very well respected and was invited many times to different councils to present his work, and had a steady stream of people coming in to see him, including myself. When I was first researching the placemaking book, Bob put me up in, I believe it was this apartment toward the end of the Main Street, and we met, we talked about his effort to support the corner store. He remarked that, what kind of a place do you have if you don't even have a corner store? And the fact that the woman who ran the corner store lived above the corner store meant that people were really getting to experience, to live out the urban lifestyle opportunities that he was creating. He told me that when people would come, he didn't choose to maintain control of all the property. He would sell off pieces of the property. There were always people coming in with business ideas to meet with him. And he would listen to them, and he always kept copies of Ray Oldenburg's Great Good Place book. And so he'd listen to the ideas for the business and nod, and that sounds like a good idea. And he would try to share with them what his vision was for the Village Center. And he'd end up giving them a copy of the book. And one time when I visited, this probably isn't there anymore, but I saw kind of one of the results of that. Here was the Third Place Pub and Grill that had popped up on the Main Street. He was very true to this concept of a village center, the architecture, this gently curving Main Street, the preservation of the trees, the creation of carriage lanes. All of this was very consistent, and he understood all about walkability without having really going to any seminars for people to describe it to him. This was the Main Street where he was not allowed to have on-street parking, so he simply just didn't stripe it, but he didn't enforce it. He, in fact, encouraged and allowed people to park on the Main Street and create a really calm setting. And then this village character and this mature landscape was really wonderfully preserved. This is the meeting hall, which Bob designed, and this was one of my last stops on my visit where he just kind of turned me loose with members of the Homeowners Association. And this was pretty early in the days of building Hale Village Center, so I just started asking questions. I said, what do you think about what Bob's doing here? It's totally unlike your neighborhoods, which are very suburban, very conventional. And a lot of these folks were my father's age. They were not urbanists. They were kind of really true suburbanists and golfers. And they all remarked, they said, well, we're not worried about it at all. And I'm like, well, why not? Other places are worried about traffic and mixed use and all of this stuff. And they said, well, no, Bob's doing it. We have total confidence in Bob. We're not worried at all about what he's doing. Everything he does is quality, and he had the confidence and respect of everyone in that room, and I was very impressed and taken with that. And the community has really blossomed since then. This is another view of the town hall. And one of the lasting legacies And I just found some images on the web from a recent event there. Is the opportunity for people on an everyday basis to experience and to enjoy the place that he created. He is survived and celebrated by a loving family, but also by the town he created, and by the friends, acquaintances, and admirers whose lives he touched and inspired through his life and work. And here's just a few views of people using that place and enjoying it. I'd like to, we're very fortunate, I'd like to invite Bob's wife Shirley, his son David, and good friend David Coffey to join me on stage to accept the award.
I'm David Kramer. Just wanted to say thank you. My dad would have loved everything about this. And, he loved CNU and he loved New Urbanism. I had the privilege of going through his laptop when he passed away. And just to give you some idea of how much he loved architecture and places, there were 12,000 pictures, and I think there were 4 of people. So he really loved this stuff, and he would really, truly be happy and honored. Thank you.